Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host Omar Khalid Butt. Today is the 1st of November 2022. A new month begins. A lot of hopes, a lot of aspirations, and a lot of looking forward to important events. The most important of which is the Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's visit to the People's Republic of China. He has arrived in Beijing. He has already been received there, and of course the next day is going to be extremely busy for him. He's going to meet many important leaders that include Li Keqiang, who is his counterpart, the Prime Minister of the People's Republic of China, Xi Jinping, the president who's been elected a third time after the 20th CPC. Then of course CPEC is going to be one of the major discussions on board. There are a lot of important ministers and other important leaders that are going with our Prime Minister, and I think the most important factor of discussion will be the economy, how to move together as one as far as strengthening the region, Pakistan and CPEC is concerned, and how to also look at things that that pertain to both Pakistan and China, whether it be in the geopolitical or geostrategic arena. It's a very, very important visit. Also, Shehbaz Sharif Saab is one of the first international leaders to have been invited to the People's Republic of China officially after the 20th CPC and after Xi Jinping having been elected for a third successive time. These are important times. These are important events that are happening across the region, across the globe, whether it be the tensions between the US and China, whether it be the Russia-Ukraine war, whether it be the Pakistan's own economic crisis that Pakistan is going through because especially of the climate change and the floods that have wreaked havoc on the 33 million plus people and 1/3 of the country that was underwater. The economic loss is of course extremely important for Pakistan, and Pakistan is trying to do whatever it can to come out of this current situation. The visit to China is an important hallmark in that, and also to strengthen the relationship between both the countries, that is Pakistan and China. We've been joined by two important guests to talk about different aspects of the relationship between the People's Republic of China and the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. But before we announce our guests, let's watch this following report.
Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif left for China today for a two-day official visit at the invitation of Chinese Premier Li Keqiang, reflecting Pakistan's bid to continue sound momentum of close high-level exchanges between the two neighbours. According to Prime Minister's office, a high-level delegation is accompanying the Prime Minister during his visit to China, where he would meet President Xi Jinping and hold delegation-level talks with Premier Li. The visit is expected to advance the wide-ranging bilateral cooperation agenda with the conclusion of a number of MOUs and agreements in diverse areas and consolidate the momentum of CPEC cooperation in the wake of the 11th meeting of CPEC Joint Cooperation Committee. Ahead of his momentous visit to China, Prime Minister Shehbaz reiterated that at a time when the world is grappling with multiple challenges, Pakistan and China stand together as friends and partners. Addressing Pakistan-China Business and Investment Forum, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif emphasized that Pakistan strongly needed to emulate Chinese model of development for its sustainable progress and prosperity. In an opinion published in the Chinese newspaper Global Times, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif described the ties between the two countries using the words longevity, love and trust, and elucidated that government's overall aim is to harness the potential of CPEC for Pakistan's inclusive and sustainable growth, socio-economic development, and for improving the livelihoods of our people.
We've been joined by two important guests. Let me introduce them to you one by one. Online, we've been joined by Dr. Fazlur Rahman. He's a director of Pakistan Institute of China Studies at the University of Sargodha. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, to have joined us. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Our guest in the studios is Dr. Usman W. Chohan. He's a renowned political economist, and we've had him as guest for many an episode, and the last time we talked about was on FATF, and a few minutes after we had finished our discussion, our country came out of the grey list. Thank you very much, Usman, to have joined us as well. Let's begin with you, Dr. Saab. Dr. Fazlur Rahman.
Yes.
Now that the Prime Minister has arrived in Beijing, and of course tomorrow is going to be a very, very hectic day because there are a lot of meetings that are going to happen and probably a lot of MOUs and agreements. When you look at the whole aura of relationship or a friendship of collaboration between the two countries, how do you feel this visit would bode as a next step in further strengthening that?
Actually, this visit is taking place at a very crucial time, at a very crucial juncture, when Pakistan's economy is in a bad shape, and on top of it, the floodings and some other issues have impacted it very negatively. So I think that this is the time where Pakistan needs China's support in so many areas, and specifically, when we see that this is the second phase of CPEC. So in second phase of CPEC, emphasis has been given to agriculture and social emancipation, which means social sector development, besides other things. So I think the most affected part under the climate change and the recent flooding has been the agricultural sector, and also there is a great need of social sector development, which has also been impacted by this natural calamity. So I think these two are going to be the prime issues from where we need to support and recover economically. And of course, the larger economic cooperation is going to take the center stage of bilateral negotiations and bilateral agreements and MOUs. So I think that this is going to prove to be a landmine visit, which is going to pave the way for future cooperation, which is going to pave the way for further enhanced, elevated relationship. And I think the momentum of CPEC will be picked up by this visit.
All right, Usman, I'd like to refer to a quote of the Foreign Ministry spokesperson from China, Zhao Lijian. He was also the #2 at the Chinese embassy in Pakistan a couple of years back. He said that they appreciate the Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's remarks when he talked about his visit to the People's Republic of China. He said, I quote, "We believe they show the importance he attaches to his visit to China, the high quality of China-Pakistan relations, and the deep friendship between the two people. Also, no matter how the international or domestic situations have evolved, China-Pakistan friendship has been carried down from generation to generation." We have seen a lot of critics of the Pakistan-China relationship. We have also seen this relationship strengthen with time on different avenues. Which is the most important facet that you feel will be highlighted during this visit of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif?
It's an excellent question because there are multiple facets, as Dr. Fazl Saab also mentioned. I think that the most important thing will be that as both countries look forward at their new stage of cooperation, how are we going to do it together? That is what's going to happen. And it won't be in one dimension, it will be in multiple dimensions. What we have to understand is that even though Pakistan is going through economic difficulties, the truth is that the whole world is going through economic difficulties, including China. And so this is a time for us to get together as true close friends to say, now we are going to start the next step together. And the symbolism of the spokesperson is very noteworthy because a fellow communist country, Vietnam, its leader is going after. The Europeans are going even after that, which means Olaf Scholz of Germany and Macron of France are going a month after. So there is a symbolism in who you want to meet first as you start a new episode. What is the new episode? This will be Xi Jinping's third term. And this is a term in which he is trying to put more emphasis on reshaping Chinese society after their experimentation with the last phase. The last phase was the Deng Xiaoping era, where they experimented with capitalism. They have seen the crises that occur from this, and now they want to make it a more harmonious and equitable society. This new phase then requires a new mindset. Pakistan must stand with them at this stage. So it's not just us asking for help to them, they also want our help to work together.
All right, working together, Dr. Fazlur Rahman, we know that the 20th CPC was held recently, after which Xi Jinping was elected for a third successive and consecutive time. How important do you feel is the CPC for China? How important do you feel the CPC is also for China's relationship with countries including Pakistan?
Well, actually, if we look at the track record of CPC of the last 100 years, it has been not only evolving as a very strong component of China's development, but at the same time, it has really helped bringing China from that abject poverty, which China was like 40, 45 years back, and now it is a country which is really not in the category of poor countries by any stretch of imagination. So I think the role of Communist Party of China in keeping the people united together and bringing about a major sea change into the livelihood and uh, making tremendous progress which has not been precedented in the human history. I think that is something which is the most significant, important, single most important achievement of the CPC. And CPC is backbone of the Chinese society, Chinese development, and Chinese development model. And I think that CPC will continue to play its significant role, which as it has been playing in the past, and is going to steer China through all these challenges which we can identify and see at the moment, and will make tremendous progress and will certainly be the leading country in the world.
All right. Dr. Usman, challenges that confront China, challenges that confront Pakistan, there are some commonalities and there are some individualities as far as those challenges are concerned. Beyond bilateral relations, in your point of view, what role can China and Pakistan play together as far as regional peace and stability is concerned?
This is an excellent point, that we confront challenges beyond just our domestic borders. The point here is that China and Pakistan both are subject to the mercy of the US dollar hegemony, which is to say that as the Federal Reserve increases its rates, it has done so 5 successive times already this year. It is doing so with the American public in mind, but it creates a value system for the dollar that crushes all other currencies. China has trillions of US dollars, so it is thinking very hard about that. In Pakistan, there is a dollar crisis, and so the rupee right now is artificially low. This isn't the real value of the rupee. It should be much stronger than that. So we are both looking at how the international economic system is not stepping up. Part of that is the Federal Reserve. I understand that it has to do with domestic stuff, but it is ruining other countries. Sri Lanka is essentially ruined most by the Federal Reserve because it has to import oil in the US dollar, as do we all. The second major thing is that major international financial institutions are not stepping up when they should. That helps to explain why Sri Lanka, for example, is going through such a
terrible time. But why is that? Why are financial institutions not stepping up? Because it's a very important point.
Yes, well, it absolutely is. And it's because the international financial institutions are held at the mercy of their largest shareholders. And their largest shareholders have domestic interests. So very much like the Federal Reserve, the IMF and the World Bank have certain stakeholders that own a disproportionate amount of it, and so they're answerable mostly to them. Countries like ours have small percentages. Even China, relative to its size, doesn't have a big share. It's a big share, but it isn't large enough relative, commensurate with China's economic strength. And so the IMF and World Bank aren't playing their part. They should be lending as diligently and as proactively as they did in COVID, because I argue to you that the post-COVID society is in greater distress than even COVID society was.
Because it already has the the additional burden of COVID, the mental challenges that has come with, the physical challenges that have come with it, and of course the social challenges and economic challenges that are attached to it all. Dr. Fazlur Rahman, Pakistan, China challenges, we've talked a little bit about it, we'll talk in detail a bit later in the show as well, but there are commonalities as well. There are issues that go beyond a friendship, that go beyond even a normal relationship. It's a bond that cannot be broken. That is why both countries are called iron brothers. Do you feel Pak-China axis inspires greater cooperation, and do you feel it could help the region break a vicious cycle of deprivation and conflict that it is going through?
Well, absolutely. Pakistan, China are going to work together, calibrate their policies, and will certainly influence the developments in the region. And those developments, particularly pertaining to Afghanistan, particularly pertaining to regional economic integration, and specifically so about the climate change, which is going to impact the region. I think there Pakistan and China can play a tremendously important role, not only for themselves, but also for the overall benefit of the region. So I think that Pakistan, China's united position on certain challenges which are faced by this region, which are faced by the world, it's very important that the two countries should calibrate their policies and work together and try to identify the areas, practical areas where the two can really pool their resources and work together. So I see that in coming days and coming years, there will be more and more cohesiveness in terms of policy coordination between Pakistan and China. We have seen in the last 1 decade that we have started from like two countries, bureaucratic cooperation, collaboration on different, subjects that has come under CPEC. And now that maturation stage has come where we can very easily engage each other as far as the policy implementation issues are concerned. So I think there's a brighter future for Pakistan-China relations, and it's going to definitely have positive impact on the regional countries and on the issues which are confronted by all the countries of the region.
All right, Dr. Usman, Dr. Fazlur Rahman talked about natural challenges, calamities as well as challenges. Now, let's come to another quote by Zhao Lijian, who talked very recently, and he said that our two countries have always supported each other on issues concerning our respective major interests, and we have always stood together and helped each other in the face of major natural disasters. Let's come to climate change. Let's come to the floods that Pakistan has seen the dastardly effects of. I said that in my introduction. I've always said this since a long time since the floods happened, that this is an extreme case for Pakistan, a case that Pakistan is not really the one behind, but a victim of the carbon emissions that major Western countries put in. Now, do you feel that China could help Pakistan, A, overcome a challenge such as this one, B, make Pakistan future ready?
Yes, it can, and it is playing that part, and it will continue to play that part, but I ultimately believe that we are responsible for our destiny, and so we have to make ourselves future ready, and we can always draw upon China's assistance in that. China is assisting with people on the ground. It has given financial assistance too, and it is reciprocal, as the spokesperson said. When there was the Sichuan earthquake in 2005, we helped them, and so this is how brotherhood is fostered among nations. But the fact that climate change has been so disproportionately brutal on a country like ours is the truth. We are only responsible for 0.5% or less of world emissions, even though we are more than 3% of the world's population, so 1/6 of what we should be doing. Now, in that case, China is actually making tremendous strides in making a more sustainable economy. There is an exception to that because of the current global energy crisis. So they have pumped up their coal, but that will go away. It's not part of their long-term targets. Their long-term targets are to draw upon renewable sources. And Pakistan has also worked very hard, and we are very luckily naturally endowed in natural resources. We get so much sun. We have the rivers that flow.
We have the 4 seasons.
We have the 4 seasons. We have large tides. We have the overflowing tributaries of the Indus. I mean, we're a blessed people, and so are the Chinese. So how do we convert those natural bounties into sources of energy? That is where it's a technical subject, but it also requires political will, and it requires everybody to be on board that this is a priority. This isn't a very exciting topic to talk about, for example, dams and all these things, but it is the most important one.
And even modernity in agriculture sector, I think we can learn a thing or two from China in that respect.
Absolutely, and they have experimented in many ways and shapes. Some things were not successful, but ultimately they have come up with many new products, and I think the most impressive is one that applies to us. It is fighting the desert in northern China and western China, and they have fought the desert out. Similarly, we also have deserts on both sides of our border, and we are blessed with a river in the middle. That's why we are such a large country, because of that. But if we can push the desert out, then we will become far, far more productive. You know, already we are a very productive society. For example, they say that Ukraine exports so much wheat. Yes, but it produces as much as Pakistan does. It's about 25, 26 million tons. It's just that our population is much larger. But if we can make the rest of this land also productive agriculturally, then we can export even more, and that would be an additional boost in our foreign exchange earnings.
All right, Dr. Fazlur Rahman, speaking of important meetings between Pakistan and China, the 11th meeting of the Joint Cooperation Committee, otherwise known as the JCC of the CPEC, was also held very recently. It was a virtual meeting, and it was apparently a huge success. Points that were highlighted, the objectives were the revival of the CPEC, the cooperation in the agricultural sector are two very important points. How can this bode for the development of the relationship in the economic field of both Pakistan and China, and also for Pakistan in general?
Well, I think it's quite clear that at this point in time, when there's a global food scarcity, and Pakistan is also going through kind of a period where there is a food shortage, and we need to enhance it in terms of our population growth. Now, by in 2030, we are going to be exponential increase in our population, and by 2050, it's going to be like 335 million people. And if we grow our agricultural sector with the pace that we are working at the moment, I think we will be utterly unable to really cater for the needs of that population. So we think that China, with its developed technological know-how, which can be easily transferred to Pakistan, and Pakistan has the capacity, it's an agricultural country, it has the capacity to absorb this technology very fast. I think the Prime Minister's recent initiative, which he has announced, I think yesterday, which is about the welfare of the farmers. I think that's a great initiative, and I think there should be several more initiatives giving respect to the farmers, emboldening the farmers, and trying to protect their interests also. They should not be subject to this cartelization or mafiaization of their produce. I think that we need to really bring in some kind of agricultural reform over the years, and we need to strengthen this sector, and China is going to be great help in doing so and achieving our future targets.
All right, Dr. Usman, strengthening the agricultural sector and strengthening the China-Pakistan economic corridor through the 9 special economic zones, and of course the other fora through which the CPEC can be further boosted, not only for Pakistan and China, but for the region and for different other countries of the world that are also interested in being part of the China-Pakistan economic corridor. Now, one of the points that came out of the JCC was also that both China and Pakistan have urged great powers to abandon the outdated Cold War zero-sum mentality and the narrow geopolitical mindset and embrace cooperation and multilateralism. Could that happen? Would that happen?
It must happen. It's not that it could or it should, but it must happen, because what you see in the world today is the old structures post-World War II are simply not built to handle the complexity of the wicked problems that the world faces today. What the JCC has concluded is that this Cold War mentality is outdated. We really have to solve the biggest problems together. There is a free rider problem in climate change, which is to say that if one country arrives at zero emissions successfully, then everybody else has no incentive to do the same. They can continue to pollute as they do, and the externalities of that on neighboring countries are always terrible. For example, much of the pollution that you will feel in the winter in Lahore or other cities bordering India are from Uttar Pradesh and Chhattisgarh and the terrible factories there. That is an externality that is coming across because the polluted air doesn't need a visa to get here. So that's why we are all interdependent in that sense, that climatic effects happening elsewhere are damaging us. And perhaps the most important one, where China and Pakistan share an immediate concern, is the glacial melt of the Himalayas, because we share this mountain range. And the amount of outflow that is happening now really has to be stored in a sustainable manner to help with the water reserves and the agricultural requirements.
All right. Dr. Fazlur Rahman, I'd like to understand a little bit on the geopolitical or geostrategic arena, and I'd then refer the question to Dr. Usman as well. But starting with you, the tensions between the United States of America and China, the Russia-Ukraine war, what is happening in Afghanistan, the rise of extremist elements within the country that are endangering Pakistan, but that could also endanger China. Then there is the India factor that is directly or indirectly destabilizing Pakistan, and also the China-Pakistan economic corridor. Are these all of these issues interdependent, interrelatable, and if so, how much of both these countries, that is Pakistan and China, can work together to thwart as much of that as possible?
Well, in my opinion, I think that we have to look at the larger picture, and the larger picture tells us that it's basically the rise of China. It's basically the China's expanding global influence that has threatened the existing order, the existing domination of the West. So basically, that is the paradigm, that is the parameter under which we see all these developments being affected. Be it the Ukrainian war, be it the situation in Afghanistan, or the things in the Middle East or in Asia Pacific region. There is a direct link to China, US competition, rivalry, whatever we may call it. But it has a lot to do with that. It has to do with the China's expanding influence, which is perturbing those status quo powers. So I think that until there is kind of a management of relationship of big power or great power relationship, I think these problems are going to exacerbate, and these problems are going to further expand and complicate the international system which has been going on. As Usman has very rightly pointed out, that the system which was built after the Second World War has no capacity to absorb the complexities of the present day international relations. So I think there is a need. China is very vocally and very strongly advocating that there has to be multipolar system. There has to be the multilateral approach towards all the global issues which are impacting humanity, which are impacting different regions, different parts of the world. But on the other side, we see that there is again, that Cold War mentality which is gaining strength, which is trying to de-globalize the world, which is trying to divide the world into different segments, into different sections, and trying to create more hostile environment in certain regions. I think that approach is not going to work. It is going to be very dangerous. It is going to be very negative, and it's going to have very negative implications as far as the global peace and development is concerned. So I think that there has to be some, a collective approach, and there has to be some mechanism. There has to be some understanding on part of the great powers to actually deal with this situation. I think China's progress, China's development has become irreversible, and that is a fact. That's a phenomenal thing, and I think the West needs to understand that it cannot be reversed. It's rather going to expand. So with that expansion, I think they have to live with it. They have to live with the reality of China. So I think that all these smaller issues or sub-issues which are surfacing at this point in time needs to be tackled through this larger framework of things.
All right, Dr. Usman, Dr. Fazlur Rahman talks about a collective approach by the powers that be. He also talks about China's rise and how that is a so-called threat. Why should countries like the US or others in the West be threatened by the rise of a country like China? China has never threatened a country directly, or in fact it wants trade relations with all countries, including India, including the United States of America, and that has been recently emphasized by President Xi Jinping as well. Then why are blocks being made? Why is there AUKUS? Why is there Quad? Why is there Indo-Pacific strategy by the US? Don't you feel these are going to hamper the economic growth of the world as one?
Yes, it will, because China has been a significant component in global GDP growth for the last 25 years, yes. I'll frame this, my answer to you in an interesting way. There is one capital in China, which is Beijing, and there's a Beijing community that looks both at the economics and at the security elements with one mind. In the United States, though, there are two capitals, there are two communities. There's the New York people and there are the Washington people.
All right.
The New York folks think about economics first, the Wall Street types. They had primacy for the past 35 years. And their argument was that if you invest in China and help it develop, do your part, and then, have trade relations with them, it will develop, and ultimately Peking will follow the path of Taipei and Seoul. But that never happened in 35 years. And so the Washington folks said, okay, you've had enough time to make this point and you failed. Now it is time for us to go back to our way of thinking, which is the security mindset. And so now they're saying economics doesn't come first, trade doesn't come first, it is the security mindset. The security mindset is a big hammer, and so everything appears like a nail. And so they want to whack every nail they find. So for Washington now, they are willing to put trade sanctions, other sorts of penalties, any way to compete, outbidding China in other countries, spreading propaganda against things like the Belt and Road Initiative, trying to win over the elites of countries which are not clear on their path. And this is the security mindset. So perhaps, God forbid, for the next 10 years at least, the Washington people would try to make a point that they were right. After all, they brag about having won in the Cold War, and so they'll probably win again. And what is happening also is the persecution of the New York community. A lot of publications in America right now frame it as if the New York people sold out America and empowered China to do this. The truth is that China did it very much on its own, through its own methods, on its own terms, and gave more to the world than it took in. So the New York people are being persecuted indiscriminately and unfairly, but the fact is that they won't have a voice, and so economics is taking a subordinate position now to the security folks in Washington.
All right, Dr. Fazlur Rahman, let's talk a little bit about the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor and, of course, the revitalization of this very important mega project. We've also have second phase of the China-Pakistan Free Trade Agreement that is in the works, that is there for all to see. What kind of homework do you feel Pakistan has made in that regard, and what kind of homework do you feel Pakistan needs to do in that regard?
Well, I think that in the last almost 9 years, we see that CPEC has made tremendous progress, significant progress, which we can see on the ground from concept to implementation. And it has entered into the second phase, where the dynamics or the dimension or the approach of CPEC is modified to suit Pakistan's local conditions and requirements. Having said that, I think that now CPEC is going to gear up into the domain of social sector development, which also includes the establishment of special economic zones. I think what we should have done is that we should have made the feasibilities or the approach towards special economic zones public and should have brought it under public discussion. Because I have visited a number of Chamber of Commerce and Industries, especially the small and medium-sized industries. They feel apprehensions about these special economic zones. What will happen to our labor? What will happen to our skilled labor? Will it all shift from here to the special economic zones? I think we need to co-opt an approach which can integrate these special economic zones with our local, industrial outlook and conditions, so that there could be, a common factor which can expand our industrial growth, rather than these special economic zones working in kind of isolation with the rest of the economic conditions and economy. So I think we need to, Usman may shed some more light on that because he's an economist, but I think that, we have to do a lot of work on these aspects of constructing CPEC, where some of the sectors should not feel neglected or should not be left behind in the process. But at the same time, what we require is a high-tech industry. What we require is a industry which is export-oriented. And it is competitive. It is competitive in the global market. And our current industrial outlook is not really very, very competitive. They need to really gear up themselves in order to make themselves compatible with the rest of the world. So I think that's a very
interesting point, Dr. Saab, that you've raised local industrial outlook in the wake of the challenges that Pakistan is facing and the need of other countries so that Pakistan can make and export more and more products. Do you feel we need to have more vocational training? do you feel we need to understand markets such as the Chinese market or even other markets in the region so that we can start exporting instead of importing? How can we empower our local industrial outlook and our industries so that they can be as competitive as the international ones?
This is a very important point. Dr. Fazl Saab is correctly basing his assessment on the survey data, having communicated with the tradesperson and the business folk. So he is pointing at the dire need and the two solutions that you have given about higher quality labor with a stronger work ethic. Ethic is also a mindset. It isn't just the skill set, as well as the research into other markets, particularly the Chinese market. People here think of the Chinese people in the abstract as brothers, but the people-to-people connections aren't necessarily as strong as, for example, somebody like me who has lived in China. I have a different perspective, more intimate perspective. So we need more people-to-people contacts, and that gives you an idea of market research because you can simply ask the Chinese people you meet, what do you like and what do you want? I'll do it for you. It's really that simple. Market research is framed as a science, but it isn't. But the third big thing, other than the two good solutions that you've provided, is the energy requirements. Pakistan's energy requirements are very, very high, and as it stands right now, it is almost cost prohibitive for them to operate. And so some factories are in a kind of pause state right now until the global energy markets normalize. And this energy factor is a huge input cost for many of the things we work hard on, for example, cement or other basic materials. The energy cost is simply too high right now, so I hope that the global energy markets find a natural equilibrium. That will depend on Russia, it will depend on Saudi Arabia, it will depend on the United States. It doesn't depend so much on China and Pakistan, which is why the points made earlier about cooperation, this is where strategies need to be made, that how we on the demand side can deal with the adversities of the supply side countries.
All right. From the economic front to a little bit on the political front, when you come to the gamut of relationship between Pakistan and China, of course, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is a hallmark, so are the other important facets of the relationship. But do you feel understanding Pakistan, understanding China and the dynamics of the relationship between the both countries, that there are certain aspects of this relationship that haven't been explored as of yet?
Is this question for me?
Yes, exactly, Dr.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think it's basically, sort of having better understanding of Chinese culture. That is very much important. I'll give you one example. In my university, if I just go, actually I've been conducting interviews with the students, and when I ask the students, just give me names of 3 or 4 major cities of China, so I think that more than 70-80% students are unable to name the 3 major Chinese cities. So if this is the level of understanding of a brotherly country, I think that we need to work very hard on some aspects of our bilateral relations. Same is the situation in China also. But perhaps those who are focusing on Pakistan, they are better off there. At the official level, at the business community level, we need to inculcate the kind of ideas, the kind of information we have to input, so that they start developing understanding about China. And similarly, the Chinese businessmen also should have more deeper and deeper understanding of Pakistan. Similarly, at the government official levels, we have been preparing policies, we have been making recommendations, but sometimes it's not really suitable in the Chinese system because the Chinese system works in on a different model. Sometimes we get like frustrated that we have proposed something, but it is not coming through. There's been no response. But we have to understand the system under which the things operate. Unless until we understand the system, we understand the culture, we understand the people, we understand the mindset, I think a very comprehensive, compatible relationship cannot be built. So we need to, I think, work on multiple fronts to have developed deeper understanding of China in Pakistan and Pakistan in China in order to consolidate, in order to enrich, in order to nurture this relationship so that our future generations can benefit from it.
Of course, that's very important that future generations benefit from it. We are a country of a majority of youth, and that is what we need to give them, a stable, a more prosperous Pakistan. For that, our relationship with China is of paramount importance. Dr. Fazlur Rahman, Dr. Usman talked about, understanding realities. do you feel these realities are also incorporating the geostrategic or geopolitical realities that both the countries, that is China and Pakistan, are witnessing or are directly or indirectly affected to? And do you feel that these are being incorporated into the new strategic ties between Pakistan and China?
Yes, I believe they are. And the reason for that is that both countries are acutely aware of the dangers that they face, one. And the second reason is that there is a frankness of communication between both sides based on the G2G level of respect. So with respect, you can communicate your concerns and they communicate theirs, and then both sides try to accommodate accordingly. Simply the fact that you have a mutual respect is actually rarer than you might think in international relations and also in economics. So the fact is that the basis for a foundation works, and awareness of the dangers works too. The next question is, what do we do about it? For example, if both countries are facing economic slowdowns, since the rest of the world is also, are the solutions going to come from nation states alone, or is it a global cooperation question? And if it is the security establishment of a hostile country ready to entertain its geo-economic side too, or are they going to take primacy? The fact is that reality is a subjective construct, and ideology often plays a disproportionate role in economics because it is a normative science. It is a normative art form, and so is strategy, because strategy involves the formation of an objective, and that objective is oftentimes driven by at least partially flights of fancy, aspirational targets. So that's the kind of ambiguous environment we work in, and I tell you that the next year, 2023 and possibly 2024, will be very difficult years economically for the world. So the urgency of beginning to create a foundation of international cooperation on new platforms is very necessary.
All right. Final question to you, Dr. Fazlur Rahman. I need a very short answer because we are a bit short of time, but it was an important topic. That's why I wanted your point of view on it. Green energy, digital economy, can both countries work together on that as well?
Absolutely, yes. And I think this is the need of the hour. This is the requirement of our times, that we have to shift eventually, because it's not only sort of us. It's the now global trend and approach. And China is making great strides and great effort in order to go green. And Pakistan is also, we can follow the suit, and we can definitely acquire a lot of technical help and assistance from China in order to start working now. It's not going to be a matter of days and months and years. It's a long haul. It's going to be a long-term process, but we need to start it now so that we can achieve our targets in the future.
That change is important to make. Quick answer from you on the same question: digital economy, green energy. How important is the collaboration between both countries in these two fields?
Extremely important on the digital economy side, because of the infrastructural benefits that we get from cooperation on our side, plus the market research. We can actually create a lot of revenue, and a lot of freelancing work can come to us from their digital economy, so there's synergies. And on the green energy side, definitely there's work to be done on solar as well as water, hydropower, and they have the expertise. We also have expertise on this. It's just that they need to also put some money on the table. We have to put money on the table and recognize it as a priority.
All right. Priorities, ladies and gentlemen, are many. But the fact remains that Pakistan and China both understand each other's priorities and are both working together to not only enhance but stabilize those priorities, and to work together in order to strengthen a relationship that has been time tested. That is why they're called Iron Brothers, for a fact. Thank you so very much, Dr. Fazlur Rahman Saab. Thank you very much, Dr. Usman W. Chohan, to have had a very objective and interesting and intellectual discussion as far as the gamut of relationship between Pakistan and China is concerned. Our Premier Shehbaz Sharif Saab is in Beijing as we speak, along with a number of important delegates that are there to discuss the future of Pakistan-China relations. We wish them all the very best. Allah Hafiz.